The golden banners of the Galactic Empire unfurled across the central promenade, fluttering beneath twin suns like embroidered threats. Choirs of silver-throated avians sang in the trees, imported from a garden world known only to the elite, and the crowds cheered as the High Minister stepped onto the podium, his layered robes glinting with alloy thread. Above him, the wreckage of Earth's last hope still floated, frozen in silence, what was left of the vessel Lullaby, now reclassified by the Empire as a tactical miscommunication. From the viewing terrace 3 levels above, General Evelyn Hale stood still as glass. She did not blink. She did not sway. Her lips, lined in deep scarlet, curled faintly upward, polite as tea steam. The minister began his speech. "We gather today not to mourn, but to celebrate. Let this be the day we turn the page of tension, of misunderstandings, and walk boldly into peace, justice, and prosperity." The crowd erupted. Fireworks spiraled into the daylight, trailing glitter and lies. A child nearby laughed and waved a flag, imperial blue, with the sigil of the three-headed hawk. Evelyn did not look at him. Her eyes, pale and unervingly still, were fixed on the shimmering projection that floated behind the High Minister, the Lullaby's final trajectory. The ship had carried 327 human children, orphans evacuated from the cradle colonies, along with 3 nuns, 1 retired engineer, and a letter addressed to the Galactic Council, requesting sanctuary. The Empire claimed it had mistaken the vessel for a smuggling convoy. A low chuckle to her left. Ambassador Vrexel, a reptilian diplomat with oiled scales and sour breath, leaned toward her. "Ah, General Hale, you humans and your sentimentality, always fussing over offspring. On our world, the hatchlings dig their own graves if they're weak." She turned her head slowly, offering him a smile so serene it seemed almost devout. "We have a saying," she replied softly, "about those who laugh at graves. They usually dig their own by the second joke." He blinked, confused. Before he could reply, a servant arrived with refreshments. Evelyn declined. Her gloved hand lingered over the tray, eyes fixed on the delicate stemware, before drawing back with elegance. She drank nothing on imperial soil. Not since the last ambassadors, wine had contained nanoviruses disguised as tannins. Below, the High Minister was describing the Empire's commitment to truth and necessary sacrifices. The crowd clapped, nearly on cue. Every syllable rang false. Evelyn could hear it, the rhythm too exact, the cheers too synchronized. A performance of unity, but not belief. She'd seen performances like this before. One in particular, involving a boy named Luca, 10 years old, wore mismatched shoes because he said it made him run faster. She'd held his hand as he boarded the Lullaby. He gave her his favorite marble. She still carried it in her left coat pocket. Evelyn adjusted her collar, as if brushing off dust, and glanced toward the diplomatic cam drones above. One of them had been replaced with a human unit, stealth-coated, barely visible except for a flicker of red when it blinked. It had been watching her for exactly 6 minutes and 38 seconds. Good. She stepped forward when her name was announced. The crowd hushed. "Ladies and gentle beings of the Empire," the High Minister beamed. "May I present General Evelyn Hale of Earth, our honored guest." Applause. Flashing lenses. She walked slowly, heels clicking like gun hammers, coat billowing with the discipline of a war hymn. As she reached the podium, she turned to the minister and nodded once, gracious as a funeral hostess. Then she faced the sea of species. So many kinds of eyes, none of them wet. "I come with no anger," she began, her voice clear and measured, like snow melt over stone. "Earth has grieved. We have buried our children. We have burned the names into sky glass and spoken the litany of stars. We have prayed. And now," she paused. Something in her eyes shifted. "We thank you." Murmurs rippled. Evelyn tilted her head, smile widening. "Yes, thank you. Not for the loss, but for the clarity. We had forgotten what you are. You reminded us." A diplomat blinked rapidly, whispering to his aide. Another fidgeted with his translator node. Evelyn continued, tone honey-sweet. We thank you for showing us that in this galaxy of trade agreements and diplomatic pleasantries, the only universal language is death. A child somewhere began to cry. Its mother hushed it quickly. The High Minister stepped forward, voice forced cheerful. I believe the General speaks metaphorically. Evelyn raised a hand. He stopped. Her gaze swept the terrace, then the crowds below. She didn't yell. She never raised her voice. Earth will not seek retribution. We will not file grievance. We will not plead for council hearings or reparations. We understand now. She reached into her coat. Security tensed. She drew out a marble, translucent blue, flecked with gold. She held it up to the light. This belonged to Luca, she said. He thought it looked like a star. Silence. She pocketed it again, eyes suddenly unreadable. Thank you for the lesson. Then she bowed. Not a warrior's bow. A grandmother's. A teacher's. A queen's. She turned, and the air felt colder. The crowd erupted again, relieved, confused, unsure if it had just witnessed a blessing or a curse. Evelyn descended the stairs, footsteps softer now. The servant who had offered her wine earlier was gone. In his place stood a girl barely 20, wearing an attendant's uniform too crisp for its age. Human. Pale hands clenched tightly around a data scroll. Ma'am, she said, voice trembling. The Reaper protocol is green. Evelyn didn't stop walking. Good, she replied. Initiate phase 1. The girl hesitated. But the diplomatic channels. They already declared the terms, Evelyn murmured. They just don't realize the contract is written in blood. She reached the docking platform where her ship waited, a sleek black arrowhead of war, disguised as a diplomatic envoy. As the hatch opened, Evelyn paused and looked back toward the palace. Fireworks burst above the spires, casting fleeting shadows across the marble faces of statues. Children, she whispered. Her hand brushed her coat pocket again. The girl at her side asked, Do we give them a warning? Evelyn's voice was gentle. We did. Inside the ship, lights shifted from blue to crimson. As the hatch sealed, Evelyn stood in the command chamber, alone. She opened the data scroll, scanned the list of names. The first was Vrexel, the lizard with the jokes about graves. She pressed her thumb to his entry. Confirmed. The ship's AI voice chimed softly. Target acquired. Evelyn closed her eyes. Above the planet, the stealth fleet waited in silence. Back on the surface, the High Minister smiled for a photo beside the flag. Behind him, cam drones glitched for a second, just long enough to capture a flicker of red behind Evelyn Hale's retreating form. That night, as the city slept, the first communications relay failed. A blackout in Sector 8. Minor. No concern. A whisper in the dark. And Evelyn's final words on Imperial soil would later be repeated by surviving aides in hushed voices. We brought lullabies. They answered with fire. Now we sing in silence and let the sky carry the sound. The Empire had expected outrage. They were prepared for protest marches, impassioned speeches before the Galactic Council, maybe even a few symbolic sanctions. Instead, they got something worse. Silence. Earth's official channels submitted a single document, a curt acknowledgement of the unfortunate incident, and the Empire's gracious apology. They made no accusations, no threats, no demands, and then nothing. 3 days passed, then 5, then 11. By day 12, paranoia bloomed across the Empire's intelligence circuits like mold in a sealed coffin. Counselor HYX, an insectoid diplomat with a honeyed voice and a fondness for chess, called a closed-door meeting on the matter. He arrived with charts, heat maps, economic trend lines, and a dark frown etched across his segmented brow. I'm telling you, he hissed to the ring of seated strategists, they're not grieving. They're calculating. Laughter rose from across the chamber. One plump, furry delegate barked, Humans? You give them too much credit. They've always reacted like children, loud, emotional, erratic. HYX didn't laugh. What child buries 327 of its own and then says nothing? They're not weeping. They're sharpening something. He was half right. On Earth, beneath the Antarctic dome, 30 kilometers under the ice. General Evelyn Hale studied a holomap the size of a cathedral floor. It shimmered with projected stars, Empire trade routes, deep space surveillance corridors. Her hands were clasped behind her back as if attending a gallery showing. Admiral Cortez entered the command chamber, boots echoing. He carried a tablet under one arm and a steaming mug in the other. The coffee was black and brutal. Reaper Protocol's pre-strike units are in position, he said, setting the mug on a ledge beside her. Phase 1 cleared. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing on a blinking node at the edge of a star cluster. Delphi 6. An industrial colony. Civilian. Prosperous. Also, the registered homeworld of 7 of the Empire's most decorated admirals. She spoke softly. Tell me the children. Cortez hesitated. Ma'am. How many under 17? He tapped his tablet. 91. Her jaw tensed. And under 10? 32. Evelyn nodded once. Not that one then. Cortez didn't argue. He never did. Not since the lullaby. He changed the subject. Counselor HYX has been pushing for another meeting. Wants clarification. We gave them clarity, Evelyn said. They just prefer confusion. Makes the guilt blurrier. Cortez exhaled. They're watching our ships. Every station, every comm relay, they're expecting retaliation. Let them, she murmured. Watch the surface while we drain the sea. Across the galaxy, Earth's fleets began to vanish, not with violence, but precision. Carrier units relocated beneath comm silence. Supply lines shifted through civilian transit hubs. Every action wrapped in diplomacy. Earth even doubled its humanitarian aid to 2 outer rim planets. On galactic broadcasts, humans smiled brighter than usual. Ambassador Nolan, Earth's representative to the Imperial Council, delivered speeches about cooperation in times of grief, while his aides quietly disabled alien surveillance drones. They sent chocolates to embassies, orchids, vintage Earth wines with cards that said, "For healing." The Empire's elite loved it. They're finally becoming civilized, one delegate cooed during a banquet. At that same hour, in a mining facility on Kepler 8, 5 Empire engineers were found dead. No signs of struggle, just the emblem of Earth's old military etched into their terminal screens with laser precision. It wasn't a warning. It was a signature. Meanwhile, Evelyn stood on the edge of a military nursery, underground, fortified, humming with life. She watched rows of Earth's new combat-born generation sleep beneath soft lighting. Infants engineered for resilience, adaptability, and learning curves so steep they'd make an AI sweat. She turned to Dr. Mahir, the program's lead geneticist. Will they be ready? He nodded. In 4 cycles, we'll have 2,000 graduates. Genetically loyal, morally hardened, mentally trained to forgive, but never forget. Evelyn said nothing, but her fingers tapped a rhythm against her thigh, the same rhythm Luca used to drum on cafeteria tables before dinner. She didn't know she was doing it. The next morning, the Empire received a letter. Not from a president, not from an admiral. It was from a schoolteacher in New Berlin, the aunt of 2 children killed aboard Lullaby. She wrote, "My niece used to draw stars. She thought they were the freckles of heaven. Now I can't tell her she's right, because you burned her before she got to 12. So I want to thank you. Not sarcastically. I mean it. Because now I know what justice tastes like. And it tastes like smoke. Sincerely, Clara Bray." The Empire filed it as civilian extremism. Still, the letter made the rounds. Some found it moving. Others found it chilling. HYX found it prophetic. He met in secret with 2 other council members. Their eyes were grim. "They're not reacting," one muttered. "They're composing." HYX placed a small device on the table. It pulsed once. "Earth hasn't missed a council vote in 70 years, he said. Today they missed 3. The others looked at him. "They're not protesting," he said. "They're preparing." Then came the glitch. A minor trade hub, Kether Prime, reported sensor interference. Routine, they said. Probably a solar flare. But within 3 hours, its communications array was gone. No damage. No distress call. Just absent. In its place, a single phrase, broadcast across the nearest five-star systems. We buried children. You will bury empires. Evelyn stood aboard the Remembrance, Earth's flagship, watching the phrase loop across the stars. She didn't smile. She whispered, "Begin Phase 2." In Earth's council bunker, Admiral Cortez presented the new diplomatic map. Redacted shipping lanes. Falsified fuel requests. Inverted fleet routes. "Half our war assets are invisible," he said. "The other half are disguised as trade envoys or geological survey ships. By the time the Empire realizes, we'll be everywhere." "And their internal security?" Evelyn asked. "We've installed human operatives in 12 Empire ministries. 6 were born on Earth. 2 trained on alien soil since birth. All greenlit. All silent. Give them 2 more weeks," Evelyn said. "Then the blade turns." She walked to a private chamber. Closed the door. Inside, the lights were low. No screens. No weapons. Just her desk, a chair, and the marble. She set it on the surface and watched it spin, catching reflections from the wall lamp. Blue and gold, like memory itself, had crystallized. Her hand moved slowly. She opened the drawer. Inside, 7 data drives. 1 for each sector. 1 for each targeted retaliation. Civilian centers excluded. Only military architects. Only those who signed the clearance. She lifted the first drive. Her voice was calm. "Let the dead decide." A transmission was sent. Short. Unencrypted. On a forgotten frequency. To the Empire, it was static. To Earth's hidden soldiers, it was the signal they'd waited for. In a lounge on Balerion, a bartender flicked off the jazz, stood, and walked into the kitchen, where his real command terminal lay behind a freezer. In a luxury cruiser orbiting Lasca's moon, a woman in a wedding dress stepped out of her bridal party and retrieved a case from beneath the floor. Across 12 systems, sleepers awoke, all with the same command. Remember the children. The Empire continued its pageantry. Dinners. Speeches. Trade deals. Their dignitaries smiled when Earth smiled. They never noticed how sharp her smile had become. And deep beneath the stars, the knife moved, drawn slow, smooth, and unseen. Until the moment it would flash. And cut. They laughed. Not out of malice, exactly, more like disbelief. The kind of laughter bureaucrats give each other after long meetings, after dismissing civilian outrage, after filing death counts under collateral. One Imperial delegate even joked that humans had begun sending sympathy baskets with sharpened fruit knives. And still, no retaliation. No fleet, no formal declaration, no kinetic strike. Just silence. Until the day an Empire general woke up in his high-orbit penthouse on Jova 9, only to find every family portrait in his home replaced with a single image. A charred child's shoe on the floor of a burning starship. No message. No warning. Just the smell of melting ink. Within hours, General Drac was dead. Officially, cardiac failure. Unofficially, his security detail found no sign of forced entry. The room was locked. No poison. No wounds. Just him, slumped in his chair, eyes frozen wide, and something scrawled into his desk in perfect human script. Luca was 10. Counselor HYX sat stone still as the footage played back on loop in his private office. He hadn't laughed. Not once. Not since Earth went silent. He leaned back in his chair and whispered, "They're already here." Across the Empire, whispers grew louder. First it was Drac. Then came Senator Olan, a staunch defender of the Empire's necessary purge, whose ship self-destructed the moment it re-entered orbit. The logs were intact, though. So was the recording. 2 minutes before detonation, the ship's lights went out. Then a voice played through every speaker. "Do you remember their names?" "We do." The Empire classified the incidents. Blamed technical errors. Suppressed the data. But people talked. And Earth still smiled. Still showed up to trade negotiations. Still sent fresh fruit, cured meats, and bottles of Earth whiskey to Imperial dignitaries. One alien diplomat even praised their composure. "Remarkable, really," he said over dinner. slicing steak with a knife far too similar to a scalpel. To lose so much and yet remain so diplomatic. Ambassador Nolan tilted his head, lifted his glass, and smiled. "We're a patient species," he said. "We don't cry forever. Sometimes we use the tears to water something deeper." When the diplomat blinked, confused, Nolan added softly, "Roots. You'll see them soon." Evelyn watched it all from orbit. From the command deck of the Remembrance, she tracked the Empire's response. Their increasing unease, their tightened border scans, their sudden silence on public broadcasts. Fear was setting in, not of war, of the absence of war. She stood beside a circular display, a rotating image of the lullaby. Its final moments, preserved through black box recovery. The explosion was instantaneous. But not the sound. The final recording wasn't a screaming. It was a singing. A nun. A soft lullaby. Off-key, steady. The last voice aboard. Evelyn closed her eyes. Admiral Cortez approached quietly, setting a fresh slate in front of her. Another one confirmed. She opened her eyes. "Who?" "High Counselor Velvex." She nodded. "How?" He hesitated, half smiling. "An allergic reaction to human roses. Our embassy had them delivered to his quarters. Genetically modified, of course. Scent-triggered neurotoxin. Painful, I'm told. But poetic." Evelyn didn't respond. She touched the screen, highlighting the name. Red X. There were now 14. 14 of the 36 who had authorized the lullaby's destruction. 22 remained. The Empire held an emergency summit. Delegates swarmed like panicked insects. They shouted for increased patrols. Called Earth silence suspicious, then provocative, then criminal. One ambassador, a violet-skinned envoy with tentacles like a gown, screamed that this was psychological warfare. And still, Earth sent wine. Still, Earth smiled. Still, Evelyn said nothing. One of the Empire's generals, a hardliner named Marvick, went on Holostream to mock humanity. He called Earth's people emotional cowards, mocked their traditions of mourning, even referred to the deaths of the children as an unfortunate but mathematically sound footnote. The clip went viral. Evelyn watched it once. Then she sent no orders. No message. Just one data packet to her sleeper agents. 72 hours later, General Marvick walked into a council chamber and opened fire. He killed 3 diplomats before security took him down. No explanation. No motive. Just a blood-streaked face, mumbling a name over and over. Luca. The Empire began to fracture. Rumors spread of human infiltration, of whispers in dreams, of Earth developing psychic warfare, of AI-driven assassins who wore the faces of children. And still, no formal war. HYX sat alone in his quarters, devouring surveillance logs, communications intercepts, even ancient Earth literature. He reread a poem that Evelyn once quoted during a peace banquet. "Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves. And immortality." He didn't understand it then. Now, he felt it under his skin. At exactly midnight across 6 time zones, every Empire public broadcast cut out for 30 seconds. No music. No speech. Just a single sound. Children laughing. Not maniacally. Not hauntingly. Just laughing. Joyful. Unaware. Until the sound cut to static. Then a voice, Evelyn's, spoke one sentence. "This is not revenge. This is memory." The Empire tried to trace it. They found nothing. Admiral Cortez stood beside Evelyn as they watched the chaos unfold. He sipped from a mug etched with the words, "Forgiveness is the luxury of the childless." He asked her, "Do you think they know yet?" "They suspect," she said. "They still think we want a war." She looked at him. "They think too small." Then came the report from Daltros 3, an entire cloning facility, responsible for engineering elite Empire officers, reduced to silence. No fire, no sign of entry, just one transmission left behind. "Your future was raised on bones. We pulled the foundation." Inside the ruins, a message carved into the wall. 327. HYX broke protocol. He called Evelyn directly. She accepted. The screen flickered. Her face appeared. Calm. Hair braided back. Dressed not in uniform, but a black blouse, mourning lace at the throat. "General," he said, breath sharp. "You have to stop." "I haven't started. You're dismantling the Empire." "We're responding. You're orchestrating a genocide." Evelyn's head tilted, eyes narrowing with something colder than rage. They were children. He stared at her. "So now you'll kill ours?" Her voice dropped. "No. We'll make sure you don't have any left to kill." He shook his head. "This is madness." "No," she said, calm as sleep. "This is accountability. You just don't recognize it because no one's ever held your hand in the fire before." The call ended. No further communications from Earth. No declarations. No ultimatums. Just silence. Until one Empire senator, a widow with 6 sons, publicly defected. She stood on the Senate floor and held up a photograph of the lullaby victims. Her speech was short. "I believed the Empire's reasons. Then I read the names." She dropped her badge of office, then detonated the chamber. The blast killed 17, including herself. Later that night, Evelyn walked alone through a quiet corridor aboard the Remembrance. She passed the Hall of Names, a chamber where every child lost had their name carved into the obsidian walls. Her hand traced Luca's. The etching was shallow. He was small. Behind her, Cortez waited. "They're calling us murderers now," he said. She nodded. "They're afraid." She nodded again. "You were right," he added. "They didn't expect silence." She turned to him, her voice like evening fog. "Because they mistook our tears for surrender." He looked toward the hall. "And now," Evelyn's eyes shimmered like old glass, "now we teach them the language of grief." Then she whispered, "Begin the final movement." The lights dimmed. The engines ignited. And across the stars, the sky began to hum. The stars began to shift before anyone noticed. To the Empire, it looked like a glitch in the long-range arrays, drifting constellations, radar fog, plasma interference. But to Evelyn Hale, it was choreography. Every false flare and ghost ping had been plotted years in advance, down to the nanosecond. She stood at the edge of the war map aboard the Remembrance, its floor humming with energy. The blue projection of the galaxy spun like a glass crown, each spark a target, each orbit a thread. Around her, the command deck pulsed low and red. Admiral Cortez entered silently, his face grave. "All fleets are in position," he said. 79 systems. Simultaneous strike capability." She nodded, eyes never leaving the map. "Sleeper agents?" "Activated. Some for extraction, some for detonation. They know what they signed." "And the children?" He hesitated, then said, "Cleared." That was the final checkpoint. She turned slowly. Behind her stood the wall of names, Luca at the top, followed by every child aboard the Lullaby. 100 rows carved in backlit obsidian, glowing softly in the quiet like holy fire. Evelyn stepped forward, pressing her palm against the slab. "You will be remembered," she said. Then she whispered, "Execute Reaper Protocol." Across the Empire, the sky cracked open. It began on Aracle Station, a hub of commerce and culture. Citizens gathered in domed plazas to watch the light storm, assuming it was cosmic weather. They laughed, took holos, kissed beneath the glittering atmosphere. Then the lights turned blue. Not the gentle blue of peace or sky. Not navy. Not teal. Something deeper. Something impossible. Within seconds, every power grid failed. Every communication channel went dead. Orbiting satellites blinked offline. And then the EMP detonations rolled in, wave after wave, leaving the Empire's proudest cities dark and silent. In the blackness, a voice played, calm, female, unmistakably human. "This is not war. This is justice." On Delvora Prime, a fleet admiral choked on his words as his command ship disintegrated in mid-orbit, ripped apart by nanite threads disguised as stardust. On Rexus, their military academy crumbled from within as its AI core shut down permanently, rerouted by a code fragment planted 7 years ago during a human-student exchange. On Zarak 1, an entire cloning complex inverted in on itself, having been built atop a buried warhead no one ever noticed, smuggled in, ironically, within the casing of a peace monument. It all happened in the span of 11 minutes. No time to retaliate. No time to comprehend. The Empire's finest fell not with battles, but with blue. Blue skies, blue fire, blue silence. HYX watched it unfold from his stronghold on Aurelian V. His compound trembled as atmospheric shields collapsed, revealing the true nature of the stars, streaked with descending human vessels, ghost-white and soundless. He stood alone in his chambers, wine untouched. The call came as he expected. Evelyn's face filled the screen. She looked older now, not from age, but from weight. Her expression was neither smug nor cruel, just inevitable. He straightened. This is genocide. She tilted her head. No, you called it a military correction. I'm simply using your dialect. He paced. We made a mistake. You made a statement. There were civilians. There were children. She said it flat. Clean. He tried again. You're ending entire bloodlines. Evelyn took a breath, and in that silence, he finally heard it, not rage, not coldness, grief. Wound-drenched, unhealed grief. We are not ending bloodlines, she said softly. We are ending your certainty, your assumption that power shields you from consequences. He swallowed hard. What happens now, he asked. She said nothing, but in the background, the soft sound of a lullaby began to play. He recognized it. The same one from the lullaby's final recording. The screen went dark. He never spoke again. Evelyn turned from a terminal. The bridge had fallen still. Her officers, dozens of them, stood silent at their posts. They watched the long-range visuals of Empire cities folding in on themselves. Systems vanishing from the map like memories erased. Cortez stepped beside her. They're calling it the Blue Hour. She nodded. It will pass. They'll regroup, retaliate. Eventually. They can try. He looked at her then, carefully. Is it over? She didn't answer. Not yet. In the Galactic capital, where once the Empire's banners flew, the central citadel stood in ruins. Smoke coiled through glass pillars. Bodies lay twisted among the statues of fallen emperors. And there, in the center of the ruined Senate floor, someone had painted in ash. 327. Not in rage. Not smeared. Written. Deliberate. Memorial. The last surviving high official of the Empire, Minister Elvek, crawled across the stone, blood dripping from his mouth. His comlink sparked beside him. He activated it with a trembling hand. Static. Then a human child's voice. Do you understand now? He wept. In the quiet aboard the remembrance, Evelyn entered her quarters alone. She sat before a terminal. A single file blinked, unopened. Luca_final.wave. She played it. His voice. High-pitched. Excited. Rambling about his day. About lunch. About a drawing he made for her. I miss you already, General Hale. I'm going to be brave on the ship. I kept your marble. I think it's lucky. She listened, tears tracing clean lines through her war paint. Then silence. A single chime followed. Operation complete. The Empire, as it was, no longer existed. Evelyn closed her eyes. She did not smile. She did not collapse. She simply sat with the weight of it. Of every name. Of every mother who would never hold their child. Of every planet where flags were now ash. Later that night, Cortez found her in the observation deck, watching the nebulae swirl. He offered her tea. She declined. He asked gently, would you do it again? Her answer was immediate. No. But you don't regret it? No. They stood in silence a while longer. Eventually, Cortez said, there's something else. She turned. He activated a screen. It showed the Galactic Council, or what was left of it. Earth had claimed its seat. And the remaining seats? Clones. Human-designed. Indoctrinated. Implanted across decades. The Council wasn't just conquered. It was replaced. Evelyn stared at the feed. At the delegates smiling. Passing motions. Speaking in tongues they didn't understand. The ultimate victory wasn't in weapons. It was in memory. In rewriting history, not with lies, but with survival. She walked away from the screen. In the corridor, a young cadet approached her, barely 18, bright-eyed, trembling. "Ma'am," she said, "is it true that you wiped them all?" Evelyn looked at her. "No," she replied. "We left their stories." The cadet looked confused. "Why?" Evelyn kneeled, resting a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Because someday one of us will forget why we did this. And when they do, I want the stories to remind them." The girl nodded slowly. As Evelyn rose, the cadet asked, "What do we call this day?" She looked out the viewport. The stars, still burning blue. "For now." Then she whispered, "We call it the day we stopped being prey."